Is it worth it playing Arknights Endfield now? That is the question. Known by some as the potential game early on, Endfield is now a pretty different game than it was 6 months ago. After multiple updates and one massive 1.4 half anniversary update, it's time to ask, did Endfield finally become the game it was supposed to be? If you've been waiting for the right time to jump in, or maybe you're someone who quit early on, I genuinely think you're in a much better position than day one players ever were. So in this video, I want to go over everything that changed over the last 6 months and why I think Arknights Endfield is actually worth your time 6 months later. Whether you're completely new, someone who quit after launch, or you're just here to listen to a random guy yap about Endfield for a few minutes, yes, you are in the right place. Let's get the most obvious reason out of the way. After 6 months of patches, of course the game has more content, more regions to explore, more stories, and more collectibles. Newer players have more to do now in terms of gameplay. But speaking of gameplay, the biggest upgrade in gameplay is definitely the endgame. Because let's be honest, one of Endfield's biggest weakness back then, at launch, was the lack of things to do once you finish the main content. Outside of the occasional Umbral update and maybe trimming boss battles, which I don't even know if I would count that as a proper endgame, you were kind of done. Now though, we have more Umbral stages, regular combat events that comes every patch, and with 1.4, we finally get Echoes of War, a brand new permanent combat mode that is updated every week. It is basically your classic DPS check with timers and all, the usual gacha game shenanigans, but honestly, an endgame mode that refreshed every week was sorely needed. Is it enough on its own? Probably not. I still think Endfield can improve a lot in this department. It has a lot to grow when it comes to a permanent endgame. But compared to launch, it is a pretty decently big step forward. And it's not just the permanent modes either. We've also been getting a steady stream of combat events. And my absolute favorite, and I'm sure a lot of other people would agree, is CC, Contingency Contract. I'd heard a lot about it from Arknights player before Endfield release, and now I completely understand why people love it. It is one of the most fun combat events I played in any gacha game. The best part is how customizable it is. You can tweak modifiers however you want, build around your own roster, push for higher risk, and if you're crack enough, you can even flex a badge, which I still did not have, to be honest. I'm so bad at the game. But I did have an absolute blast with the mode. It can still be better. I think we do need more modifier when it does come back, because at a higher risk, there is less flexibility with the modifiers you can use. Meaning the team building is not as flexible. If Hypergryph keeps rotating fun events like this while continuing to expand the permanent endgame, honestly, I'm pretty happy with where Endfield is heading in terms of endgame. Before we move on, if you've been enjoying the video so far and you like Endfield content, consider dropping a like and subscribing. It really helps out the channel, and I've got plenty more Endfield and NTE videos coming, and maybe some other games. But here's the thing, as much as the endgame has improved, I don't actually think that's the biggest improvement Endfield has made over the last 6 months. The biggest, I think, is the story. And trust me, that is something I never thought I'd be saying back at launch. Now, this is a bit more complicated to talk about, because if you're a brand new player, you still have to go through the rough part of the story. The early part of the story is still there. The slow beginning has not magically disappeared. The biggest issues I had with the launch story were the pacing, the constant exposition, and how much the game held your hand during those opening chapters. It honestly felt like the first few missions were one very long dragged out tutorial instead of an actual story. So yes, that part is still there, but here's what I want to tell every new player potentially coming into the game. Please, stick with it. Because there is genuinely a diamond at the end of all that rough. Ever since around patch 1.2, the writing has been getting better and better with every update. And by the time we reached 1.4, I was genuinely invested. One thing Endfield has always had going for it is the world. Arknights already has an incredibly rich universe, so the lore was never really the problem. Because it does share a world with the original Arknights game, the problem was getting me to actually care about what was happening. And I think they finally figured that out. starting from Tung Tung's quest all the way through Arcane's story. I have really enjoyed how Hypergryph has been writing their characters. If you are someone who likes character-driven stories, Endfield has a lot to offer. Every new operator gets their own story, and instead of just existing to sell a banner, they actually add something meaningful to the world. But 1.4 specifically was the patch that really sold me. The Wuling art finally reaches its climax, and it doesn't just focus on one character. Sure, Arcane is the emotional centerpiece, and of course, they are trying to sell Arcane on her banner. And they absolutely nailed her story. Like, genuinely, it was so emotional, and also has some of the best storytelling in the game so far. And I love Arcane. But what impressed me even more was how everyone else still mattered. Characters like Fang Yi, Mifu, Tang Tang don't just disappear to the background. They all have their own moments to shine, their own relationships, and their own role in moving the story forward. Even Tapan or even Li Feng, they all get their moments. That is something I really appreciate because a lot of the gacha games tend to introduce new characters while forgetting about everyone that came before them. Endfield doesn't really do that. And the villains? They are finally doing things. Back in the early chapters, they honestly felt like they were just there. They were just doing something that we don't know. Now they're actually making moves, creating conflicts, answering old mysteries while introducing even more questions. I think we have like a lot more now. But the kind of questions that make me immediately want to know what happens next. Especially by the end of 1.4. Dude, the twist I did not expect. And some genuinely emotional moments. Some cool ass action scenes, and every patch keeps making me more excited for where the story is going. And it's a huge leap forward compared to the early patches we had. And don't even get me started on the music. Good lord, Hypergryph really is a music company pretending to make a gacha game. Every major story moment somehow gets elevated even further because the soundtrack is just that good. It's actually ridiculous. So again, if you're starting Endfield today and you're struggling through those slower opening chapters, I'm telling you, push through it. Because once the story finds its footing, it becomes something I genuinely look forward to every patch. And that's something I definitely couldn't have said 6 months ago. Now, let's talk about the thing that makes Endfield, well, Endfield. The factory, or the AIC, an Endfield industry system. It is easily the most unique feature in the game. Even back at launch, people generally thought the factory was pretty fun. The problem wasn't that it was bad, it was that there's just wasn't enough to do with it yet. Fast forward 6 months, and Hypergryph has been expanding it almost every patch. We've gotten new mechanics like liquids, new gas mechanics, or as I like to call them, the fart mechanic and the piss mechanic. The deeper you get into places like Wuling, the more complex and interesting the factories become. Back in launch, I honestly wasn't sure how they were going to expand the system, but I'm really happy with the direction they've taken. Not only have they added more mechanics, they've also added a bunch of quality of life improvements that makes building your factory way smoother than before. There are way more outposts to optimize, more resources to manage, more production chains to experiment with, and if you're the type of players who enjoy optimizing everything, which I know a lot of you guys are, you can easily spend hours tinkering with your factory. Personally, I am horrible at it, but I still find it really satisfying, and people just watch me suffer doing it on stream. The factory is now also more meaningful. Instead of just a mechanic that you use once and not again, they have recently been adding a few more use cases for the system, which was also a complaint I had when the game launched early on. Whether it's through a side quest, upgrading accessories, or even a factory-related event, the factory mechanic, which I would argue is the defining system of Endfield, since the game is named after the Endfield Industries, It just has a lot more purpose to it. I'm really glad Hypergryph didn't back away from the system just because some people weren't fans of it. Because that would have been the safe play, trying to please everyone, trying to make everyone happy. But instead, they double down on what makes Endfield unique. As they say, the factory must grow. Now, if you're someone who absolutely don't like the factory building even after giving it a shot, I still don't fully understand you, but I respect it. Thankfully, the blueprint system makes it incredibly easy to copy other people's design, and 6 months after launch, there are already tons of optimized layout online. Seriously, just I'm gonna give you a single biggest tip for anyone who wants to build a good factory. Just go to YouTube and search up Kyostin. That's all you need, you'll be set. Now, before I sound like I'm just glazing Endfield for 10 minutes straight, there is one thing that did got worse since launch. Not by a lot, but it's still worth mentioning. I think performance has somewhat go down a bit. Overall, the game still runs pretty well, but after all of these updates, I've definitely noticed more frame drops and crashing here and there. Nothing major, but I think it is worth mentioning. Honestly, it's not all that surprising considering how much content and how much systems they've added over the last 6 months. It's not a deal breaker by any means. But it is one thing I really hope Hypergryph continues to optimize, and hopefully the more we go through the patches, the more smoother it is instead of the other way around. Outside of that though, they've been adding a lot of smaller QOL updates, addressing many of the little complaints player had back at launch. Nothing flashy, but all those little improvements really add up, so if you're returning after months away, or again, you're just a new player, the game simply feels a lot more polished than it did on release. So, is Arknights Endfield worth playing 6 months later? For me, absolutely. In fact, I think right now is the best time to start. Back at launch, there was already a lot to love about Endfield. The combat was fun, the graphics looked incredible, the character designs were fantastic, and the factory system was unlike anything else in the genre. But there were also some very obvious weaknesses, the lack of endgame, the rough early story, some QOL issues. 6 months later, I can't say every single problem has been solved, even though eventually they can solve even more of them, but I can say that Hypergryph has been consistently addressing them with every major update. That is what gives me confidence in recommending the game today. If you're looking for a gacha that actually tries something different instead of following the same formula as everyone else, I genuinely think Endfield is worth your time. Between the unique factory mechanics, the beautiful world, the incredible soundtrack, and the much stronger story, and also a steadily growing amount of content, the game feels better than it ever has. More importantly, the devs have shown that they're actually willing to listen to feedback and keep improving the game. And if they keep this momentum going, I think Endfield has an incredibly bright future. So if you've been waiting for a sign to give it another shot, this video is it. Go download it now. What are you waiting for? I've been Azu as always. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, let me know what you think about Endfield down in the comment. Do you think it's a much better place than launch? Or are you still waiting for more updates before jumping in? I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoy Endfield, NTE, or any other upcoming RPGs or gacha games, make sure to stick around. I also stream Endfield regularly over on Twitch, so if you ever want to hang out live, come join us. You can hop into the Discord if you want to chat about the game offline, or just hang out with the community. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.